Hello and welcome to Empowering PowerPoint. My name is Nancy Horton and I'm here with my colleague Jan Masiello today. We are with Transcend, which is an organization that conducts a variety of programs and services and research projects to promote disability employment and community inclusion. And Transcend administers the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center as well. Today we're going to be talking about creating inclusive presentations using PowerPoint. So on slide number 2, first of all, why should we make PowerPoint accessible? Why should you be concerned about this? Accessible features make it easier for more people to access, use, and learn from presentations, whether it be in-person events or through the independent use of PowerPoint files and slideshows. Some of the features that we're going to be talking about today are related to visibility and legibility, how easy it is to look at your slides, to read them, to tell what's on them. While other features are more behind the scenes, features that may only be relevant for presentations that would be directly used by individuals with disabilities, which could include anything from sharing your presentation with a colleague who has a disability to placing it online for independent use by the public. But even if you think that your PowerPoint will never be used for anything other than an in-person event that you present, I urge you to incorporate accessibility features. The more you make that a habit, the easier it will become to think accessible, and it will also make your presentation more versatile. It'll make it easier if the need ever arises to use your presentation or parts of it in new and different ways. So moving on to slide number 3, our first tip is to start with structure and use the built-in designs and slide layouts that are in PowerPoint. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't add elements like images or additional text boxes to your slides. You can, but you may need to use the selection pane to place them in the right order and make sure that you maintain the organizational structure of your slide. And this is particularly important for individuals who use screen readers. Screen readers are assistive technologies that scan for text on websites or in digital materials. They read the text, they convert it to another format. And one of the common ways that folks who use screen readers use them is to convert the text to an audible format, to essentially read text aloud for the benefit of individuals who are blind or have low vision. So we're going to be referring to screen readers and screen reading technologies throughout our presentation. And this is one of the areas where that is particularly important, is using the selection pane. And we're going to show you what that really looks like and how to use that in just a moment. You want to make sure that all the elements that are in your selection pane appear in the order that you want them to be read or seen. Screen readers tend to read elements from the bottom to the top. So you want your elements in an order that will make sense when they're read in that way. So on our next slide, number 4, you can see a screenshot of what I'm talking about. This is actually a screenshot of our previous slide that says start with structure. And what we've illustrated here is where you can find the selection pane and open that up so that you can see that. You'll find it within the Home tab, and then you'll look for Arrange. You'll see where it says Arrange. You can get a drop-down menu there, and then you can click on where it says Selection Pane. And then on our next slide, number 5, you'll see I've selected that. I've taken a screenshot here of where I've now selected the selection pane. I've opened it up. You can see it off to the right-hand side there. The selection pane lists all of the active elements on the slide. In this particular case, the slide has a slide number, a title, and content. So remembering that a screen reader will read these elements from the bottom to the top. Now, my practice is to put slide numbers at the bottom of the list because I like to have the slide number be the very first thing that's read, so people can be oriented to where they are within the presentation according to the slide number. Some people put the slide number at the top of the list, which would make it the very last thing that's read. Whichever way you choose, you should be consistent throughout a particular presentation. So if you want to move an element on the selection pane list, you simply select it and then use the little up and down arrows that are near the top right side of that little window there to move the item. So for example, if you decide to add an element to this slide, it's going to go to the top of the list and be the last item read. But you may not want it there. You may not want it to be in that order. So you can move it. You can move it down the list to a place that makes sense in the context of your presentation. I do want to point one thing out while I'm on this slide, and the previous slide was the same, and that is that almost the whole slide here is taken up with this image, this screenshot that I've created. I wanted this screenshot to be as large as possible on the screen to be able to show the full layout of PowerPoint itself with all the tabs and the commands and the selection pane displayed, so that those who can see that can really get the big picture. So as a result, it looks like this particular slide has no title, just a slide number and an image, which brings us up to our next accessibility tip on slide number 6, which is about slide titles. Every slide should have a title, and no two should be alike within the same presentation. Avoid duplicate titles. Every slide should have a unique title. People who use screen readers particularly may use slide titles as a way to scan for content, to find slides or sections, and this is why titles need to be unique. Titles will also be helpful if you should need to save your presentation in an outline format. It really helps with the organizational structure of a presentation. It can at times be challenging to come up with unique titles, particularly in longer presentations, but there are some things that you can do. You can be creative about coming up with slide titles. If you have, for example, a series of slides that are sort of like a list, maybe a list of top tips, for example, and you might be tempted to just use the same title for all of them. But you could say this slide is top tip number 1, and the next one is top tip number 2, or something of that nature. Sometimes it does take a little creativity, but again, it's a habit that I encourage you to get into in coming up with unique titles. Now, if the slide title seems to be in your way and you really don't want to see it, you don't want to look at it, you want to cover it up, like I did in those 2 previous slides where I really wanted all that space for my image, you can hide the slide title. You can hide it and screen readers will still be able to read them, but they won't be visible. And so that's a good little tip If you want to hide the slide title, you can do that. And so the way that you do that is within the selection pane, you find the title, and you'll see that out to the right-hand side of all of these items in the selection pane, there's a little icon, there's a little symbol that looks like a little eye. If you click on that, it becomes a little line, like as if you closed the eye. And that's the way you can hide that slide title, and then it just won't appear. Even if you move your image around, it's not going to peek out, it's just not going to be visible, but it will still be there. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Young for a few moments.
All right, so slide 7. Simple slides are sweet, like this jar of honey on this screen. Regarding fonts, we want to stick with simple fonts such as Arial or Calibri. They're considered sans serif fonts. These are easier to read due to its clean straight lines, no embellishments, and good spacing between letters. We want to avoid serif fonts such as Times New Roman and Georgia. Serif fonts have a small stroke attached to the end of a larger stroke. For some people, it's hard for them to read the serif font, so it's generally recommended that we avoid using it. Regarding font sizes, we don't want to go any less than 18 points. Following these guidelines will also help limit the amount of text per slide, because the larger the font, the less text on the slide, which helps with readability, so bigger is better. As for clear, concise languages, communicate so that the audience can understand it the first time they hear it. For users with cognitive and learning disabilities, clear, concise language is important to accessibility. There are cases where, for example, if you're a researcher, your presentation might be research heavy and require the use of lots of technical large words. It's recommended that you use it as sparingly as possible so people can follow along. Slide 8, animation. There's a lot of potential issues with animations. The general rule of thumb is to avoid it if possible, but if you do use it, make sure it's simple and not set to automatic, because it can be distracting to the reader. If you have multiple bullets on a slide and they keep flying in from left and right, it gets distracting very quickly. Screen readers might also get confused and reread animated text and alt tags. A pretty common thing I've seen in the past are slides with animations that keep repeating the animation, although the person who created that presentation didn't intend for that to happen. In those cases, sometimes a screen reader might read the bullet point more than once, which is not helpful to the viewer. The order in which the animation occurs might be off. In this example, the bullet point came first, although it's a third bullet point in this slide. If you're going to use animation, please make sure everything is in correct order in the animation pane. And then sometimes animations can come and go too quickly. Depending on the animation and setting you choose, the bullet point can disappear completely and the reader won't have a chance to even get to that bullet point and see what was there. So just to reiterate, there's nothing necessarily wrong with animations on slides, but keep it simple and don't set it to automatic. Use the click option. And make sure you double, triple check the animation pane to ensure that it is in correct and working order so you avoid confusing the reader. Slide 9. Good color contrast is a must. We can get very technical here in terms of color ratio, but we'd be going down a deep rabbit hole. Just a rule of thumb, make sure the text and background have good contrast between them. The less the contrast, the harder it is for people to read. In the example here, we have a light blue background with black text. It's easy to read because they're opposite color spectrums. The example below that, though, is an example of poor color contrast. Light blue background with light blue text. They're almost the same color. If people with normal vision have issues reading this correctly, imagine what it would be like for someone with low vision. There are tools that can assist on determining whether or not there's enough contrast between text and background. We will share one of them at the end of the presentation. Slide number 10, accessible links. It is vital that we ensure all links have descriptive text. For example, say you're planning a customized employment webinar and you want to include included in your presentation so people can click the link and register for the webinar. For the webinar registration link, you might want the hyperlink to say, register for the customized employment webinar. If you created the hyperlink to say, click here for the webinar registration, the screen reader will read it as click here. There's no context for the user to know where this link is going. So with that said, you want to avoid these sorts of uninformative phrases like click here, here, or read more, because the screen reader also has the option of scrolling through a page only looking for links. So if the writer of the document uses phrases like click here for all the hyperlinks, it's completely useless to the user because they don't know where any of the click here's goes to. We also want to keep our accessible links concise. We want to keep the hyperlink text short and sweet, not a long sentence. It should be just enough information where the user knows where the link will take them without having to question it. We also want to be unique. If your slide has 4 different links, make sure they're each a different link with a different name. And we also want to make it visually distinct. The hyperlink should look different from the rest of the text. You've probably noticed for Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, when you type in, say, www.google.com, it makes the hyperlink blue and underlined. This not only helps people with disabilities, but it also helps people without vision issues to know whether or not what they're reading is a hyperlink. Not everyone with vision issues need a screen reader. Some people with low vision can blow up text and read it, so it's important to make it visually distinct. Also, avoid underlining any text besides hyperlinks. It can confuse a reader. Lastly, there are cases where you do need to have the full URL. For example, if your document is being printed, you will need to write out the full URL so the reader can look it up online. So use your discretion on what is best for your readers and viewers. Slide 11. So let's read this. What would you rather listen to?
ADA Title I regulations.
Or
www.govinfo.gov/content/PKG/CFR-2017-Title 29-Vol 4/XML/CFR-2017-Part 1630.xml.
So as you can see, it's a lot easier to listen to ADA Title I regulations than that long hyperlink. If you're going to use a URL versus text, use URL links for only when they are going to be short and read in a way that makes sense to humans. For example, www.twitter.com/transcend. It's easy to read, not long and not a lot of words. But for the second bullet with a lot of words in the hyperlink, that you will typically want to avoid. And now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Nancy.
Thanks, Jan. So we are up to slide 12 here, and we want to continue talking a little bit about links and make sure that folks know how to create these meaningful links with meaningful text. You want your text to be a word or a phrase, a title of a document or something. Again, keeping it as short and sweet as possible while making sure that it's meaningful. You can do this on the Insert tab by choosing Link, or you can right-click on selected text and choose the hyperlink option to open a dialog box and then paste the link into the address field. And we're going to show you what that looks like here right in a second. But these would be the steps that you can easily follow to make meaningful links. So on slide 13, again, this is one of our screenshots where you see this slide. And it's got WebAIM here. WebAIM is an organization that stands for Web Accessibility in Mind. And they're an organization that has a lot of information and resources on web accessibility, of course. And so we wanted to make WebAIM into a link. Just simply select that text that you've typed or pasted there. And then you can either right click on it, or you can go up to the tab where it says Insert, look for where it says Link. It'll open a dialog box for you, and then you can paste directly into the address field in that dialog box. I recommend copying the link from its location and pasting it in there so you know it will be right. There won't be any typos. And if you can see, it's displayed up in the field at the top of that dialog box, the text that we've selected where it says WebAIM, Web Accessibility in Mind. So you can see exactly this is what is going to become the text of the link. So that's how you can easily make your links to have meaningful text. And so with that, I'm going to toss it back to Hyun.
Thanks, Nancy. So we're going to go over images next on slide 14. Use alt text to provide descriptions of images, including photos, graphics, icons, screenshots, objects, and shapes. It is important to provide alt text to screen reader users so that they're aware of any images that are on the slide. It creates an overall good user experience for them. So in this example, we're going to go back to that jar of honey and we're going to create an alt text. So to create the alt text, you're going to right click on the image that you want to create the alt text on. And as you can see, a menu will pop up. And in that menu, you want to select Format Picture. And then on slide 15, as you can see, a menu will pop up. The fields available and how they should be used may vary depending on which version of PowerPoint you have. The one that we're working with is one of the newer versions of PowerPoint. So to start, once you've selected Format Picture, a menu on the right will pop up with 3 tabs that have icons on them. You want to select the third tab of the square with arrows inside the box. This is where you will find the alt text field as shown. Newer versions, as you can see here, as the version we're currently using, has not only a title field, but also a description field. The description field should always be filled with the alt text. The title field should only be used when the description field contains a lengthy description of a complex image, such as a table or a graph. In such a case, the title field should be filled to provide a brief summary or indication of what is in the longer description. Individuals using screen readers can decide to access the description for more detailed information based on the information provided in the title field, or sometimes they'll just find the title field sufficient enough and skip the long description. Also, just a tip on the side, regarding decorative images and elements such as lines to separate sections and boxes, it's still best practice to create an alt tag for those decorative elements. We just want to get in the habit of assuming anything and everything that's decorative or an image needs an alt tag. And I will send it back to Nancy.
So on slide 16, we want to talk for a moment about composite images, which are multiple images that are intended to be viewed as one because of the relationship that they have to one another, or they're being offered as a collection, and there's a reason that you want these images to be together and to stay together. Now this particular image or collection of images that is on this slide here, this is a little collection of images that we used in a presentation that we created about welcoming customers with disabilities. And so it's a little collection of different types of welcome signs. With different sorts of themes and different information, but they're all different types of welcome signs. One says, welcome y'all, and one says, welcome aboard, and it has a nautical theme, and there's a sign that indicates an accessible entrance, a sign that indicates that service animals are welcome, a sign with sign language letters spelled out, welcome. So we put these images together to sort of convey this theme of welcome. And so you may need to do something, you may want to do something like this within a PowerPoint presentation. And so there are a couple of ways that you can do this. One is to create your image outside PowerPoint, for example, in Paint or some other type of image editing program, and then insert that whole image into your PowerPoint. Or you can insert images individually into PowerPoint and then group them together within PowerPoint. You can do this by using your Control key to select multiple images together, and then right-click on the group and select Group, and it will cause the images to stay together. You can move them around as one, and you can add alt text to the entire group so that folks using screen readers would be able to perceive that alt text on the entire group and understand the entire collection of images together. Now on our next slide, number 17, we want to talk a little bit about tables. We highly recommend, if you need to use tables in your presentation, that you create them in PowerPoint rather than inserting them as an image. You can create tables in PowerPoint. Either many slides have a little table icon within the main content box, or you can look up in the menu and you will find in the under the Insert tab, you will find a table option, and you can insert it that way. You want to always specify column headers in a table, and you want to avoid split cells, merged cells, nested tables, or blank rows or columns. And the reason for that is that screen readers generally make sense of tables and read the content based on the relationship between cells and headers. And so if you use these features, split cells and so forth, it can confuse a screen reader. Now you can, if you have to insert a table as an image, just be aware that you then have to add the description, the alt text that we were talking about a moment ago. So on our next slide, number 18, we just want to say a word about using audio clips or videos inserted as part of your presentation. This image here on this slide is just a frame from a video, and as you can see on the image, this is a video that has captions. This frame is displaying a caption that was part of this video. Whenever possible, you should try to use accessible videos or audio clips if you're going to put them in your presentation. This means that there are integrated captions or subtitles for an audio track, and if possible, audio description of visual elements. Most of us are familiar with captions. If you're not familiar with audio descriptions, they are basically spoken descriptions of visual elements. Might be describing the scenery or costumes or action or text that's displayed on screen that isn't spoken aloud. Audio descriptions are inserted into natural pauses in the audio track of a video. This is for the benefit of individuals who are blind or have low vision, to help them understand things based on things that are presented visually. So when possible, we encourage folks to use these accessible features. If they're not available, if you need to use an audio clip or a video that doesn't have these features, you're going to want to think about a way to provide that information in some other way within the context of doing your presentation, so that folks will get that information, and those clips and videos can be meaningful for them. On slide 19, as we wrap up, we want to let folks know that PowerPoint has a built-in accessibility checker. This is a feature that you can access. You can turn this on within PowerPoint. You can turn it on and leave it on the whole time you're working in PowerPoint, or you may find it easier to turn it on and do a review when you are finished with your work. So this is a built-in feature. It will highlight, identify and highlight things that are accessibility problems potentially. And for example, it may alert you to the fact that you have more than one slide with the same exact title, which, as we mentioned earlier, is not a good feature for accessibility within PowerPoint. Slides should have unique titles. So you can find the accessibility checker in the Review tab and turn it on there, and that's a nice feature that you can use. So on our next slide, number 20, we're just going to kind of recap some of the tips that we have offered today. Build it in, use built-in designs and slide layouts, use the selection pane to keep added elements in appropriate order. Keep it simple, use simple fonts in larger sizes, make sure you have good contrast, use clear, concise language, create simple tables in PowerPoint. Always use column headers for tables. And be descriptive. Create links with meaningful text and always add alt text to any image. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Hyun to wrap things up for us.
Thanks, Nancy. Slide 21, resources. These are a few resources that we found helpful when we had questions about PowerPoint accessibility. The first resource is WebAIM's PowerPoint accessibility site. It's a wealth of information on how to create accessible presentations. It covers various topics like templates, layouts, reading order, alt text, tables, links, and converting to PDF. The second resource is WebAIM's Document Accessibility course. It's ideal for people who really want to dive into the world of accessibility. It's a certificate course provided by WebAIM that covers accessibility for Word, PowerPoint, and PDF. No skills are required besides a basic working knowledge or familiarity of Word, PowerPoint, and Acrobat. The third resource is Color Contrast Analyzer. It's a software that you can download from their website. It allows a user to use an eyedropper tool on color combinations to see whether or not the color contrast is accessible. It's very useful because it removes the need to do the math and figure out color ratios. As long as a color combination meets the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, otherwise known as WCAG, levels AA or AAA level guidelines, you are good to go. Slide 22. Thank you. Thank you for sitting in on this webinar and learning a little bit more about PowerPoint accessibility with us today. For more information, please visit Transcend Inc. at www.transcend.org and the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center at www.adainfo.org to find out more about us. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments or concerns. We're more than happy to help. Thank you and have a great day.